What's going on, everybody? My name is Trendkill. It's been a while. Let's go ahead and get into Know Your Enemy. So literally, last episode, I was like, I'm gonna try to get these out every week for you guys. And then the spectator bug hit. So I couldn't record any footage, therefore I couldn't get this guide out. So I'm gonna go ahead and apologize. And just so you know, I've already started working on the next guide, so it should be out next week. It probably won't be because I'm a liar. Anyway, if you guys do have any questions about when the next episode's coming out, or if you have questions on a certain god, or you want to tell me just how awesome this series actually is, make sure you follow me on Twitter at TrendKillV01. So since you've waited so long, let's go ahead and skip the fluff. Let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about Hercules, the champion of Rome. Oh, that was, my muscle's not big enough to kiss it. Alright, so let's take a look at the graph of Hercules. Now, starting off, Hercules is a warrior, and just like all of the other warriors we've looked at already, he's got a little bit of everything. Now, you can see, obviously, his damage and control are very high. You'll see why in a second, but he's got a very little bit of mobility because he's got a very short dash. His utility is kind of low because most of his abilities are pretty straightforward. His defense is fairly high because he is that warrior-type role, and he's got a little bit of healing because he can heal himself. So let's take a peek at his abilities so we can find out exactly why his graph looks this way. Alright, so for starters, let's take a look at his passive Strength from Pain, and this is already going to show you at least a little portion of why his damage is so high on that graph. Essentially, as Hercules loses health, he gains physical power, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's around 50 physical power at level 20, and that is exactly relative to how much life he's lost. So if your maximum possible physical power buff is 50, and he's at half health, at 50% health, you're going to get 50% of that maximum buff, meaning you're going to have 25 additional physical power. Now, it's going to be really hard to track that information because you're never going to be watching your health at all times to know exactly how much physical power you're getting, but just know that as he takes damage, he does more damage. Alright, so let's take a look at his first ability, Driving Strike. This is one of my favorite abilities in the game, and in my opinion, it's one of the better abilities in the game. It's got a very good base damage, a high scaling, and it stuns for a second and a half. Essentially, this is a very short dash, and the reason that I like this is because it works so well in the rest of his kit. The only two things you need to remember is that if he hits you with this, it will stun you for a second and a half at max rank, and he's immune to knockback during the dash. Now, I don't know how relevant that's going to be in a normal fight, but he is immune to knockback while he's dashing. His second ability, Earthbreaker, when coupled with Driving Strike, is probably one of the best marriages of two abilities in the game. Very similar to Sylvanas reaching out with his Treant and pulling you to him, Earthbreaker knocks Earth up underneath you and knocks you back to Hercules. Now, you're going to watch out for a very tricky combination of Earthbreaker into Driving Strike, where he flips you back, he spins around himself, and then pushes you back further with Driving Strike. One, that does a ton of damage. Just base damage alone does over 600 damage, plus the scaling on both abilities, and stuns you for a second and a half after that, all the while you're being completely pulled and isolated out of a team fight. So this can be one of the most deadly and devastating ability combinations in SMITE. His third ability, Mitigate Wounds, just makes Hercules a beast. Now, this is a very unique ability in the fact that it's one of the very few abilities that actually heals you from damage taken. However, this ability heals you in a way that is specific to this ability alone. Now, for the people who want to learn how to play Hercules from this guide, I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit more time on Mitigate Wounds than I am on the other abilities because it takes a little bit to understand. Essentially, in SMITE, as you're playing any other healer, you take damage, oh crap, I need to heal that back up, and later you cast a healing spell. With Mitigate Wounds, you need to preemptively be using this ability in times where you think you're going to be taking damage. So how this works is you activate Mitigate Wounds, and for the next 4 seconds, all the damage that you're taking is returned to you as healing at a percentage based on the rank of the ability. So at max rank, all of the damage that you take over the next 4 seconds is returned to you at 90% return over the next 10 seconds. Now, to break that down into actual numbers, if during that 4-second charge of Mitigate Wounds, you take 1,000 damage, that means over the next 10 seconds, you're going to heal 90% of that. So you're going to heal 900 health. So while you do take the damage, you get 90% of that damage back. Now, in addition to that, that, during the 4 seconds, Hercules heals once every second for, at max rank, 55 health, meaning that you are usually netting health from using this ability. You would have to take more than 2,200 damage over the course of 4 seconds before you're not actually netting health from this ability, which is pretty crazy to think about. It feels pretty crazy as playing Hercules to use mitigate wounds and walk into a massive team fight, take a ton of damage, and walk out with next to full health. And finally, his ultimate Excavate. This is a very interesting ability. Essentially, Hercules rips a boulder from the ground and throws it in a certain direction. Now, unlike, say, Ra's Searing Pain or any other straight shot type ability that goes through all of the terrain, this ability actually utilizes the game physics and can be thrown over walls or can be bounced off of walls for things like trick shots. Now, the cool thing about this ability is that you can hit somebody, then have the boulder bounce off of the wall and come back and hit them a second time. Now, if you read the tooltip, it says that subsequent hits on the same enemy do 50% less damage, so you're not going to hit them as much, but you do get to do bonus damage if you can find a way to hit them twice. Now, it's not always going to be where you're going to want to try to find a way to bounce the boulder off of a wall, but you do have that option. Outside of being able to bounce it and do more damage, the only other additional information you need to know about Hercules' boulder is the fact that he is immune to crowd control while casting. So now that we've got all of that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and move into the mechanics section and see how we can piece all of these abilities together to come up with some really cool tips for if you find yourself playing against a Hercules. Alright, so in the mechanics section, we usually talk about tips that are specific to the god that we're discussing in the video. Obviously, in this video, we're talking about Hercules. However, randomly, I like to drop generic tips in as well, especially when they are very important to focus on when you're playing against the god we're discussing. So the first tip I want to talk about has nothing really to do with Hercules specifically, but is very important to focus on when you're playing against a Hercules, and that is positioning. Knowing what an enemy god can do to you is very important in deciding how safe you are in any given position. Gods like Sylvanus or Hercules, who can pull you out of position, means that in general you need to play a little further back. However, when their pull ability is on cooldown, you may play a little closer because you know they can't pull you out of position. Now, this tip is super important in playing against a Hercules because not only can he pull you, but if he happens to get behind you, he can also push you back using Driving Strike. You're going to find out that Driving Strike is a very important ability in Hercules' kit, and this ability itself is a game changer. If you're playing against a Hercules in solo lane and you're just a little bit past middle of the solo lane, there's a very good chance he can flip you with Earthbreaker, push you with Driving Strike, and all of a sudden you're in Hercules' tower. Hercules is the king of taking advantage of people with poor positioning early on in the game because the tower in 2 or 3 shots is going to completely erase that person. So when we're talking about positioning in relation to Hercules, be very careful getting pulled, but also be very careful allowing Hercules to get behind you and pushing you his direction. A good Hercules will find ways to get around you. He may casually stroll past you, acting like he's going to hit your minions, and then when he finds you not paying attention, he may walk straight towards you and Driving Strike you into his tower. As you try to get away, he may pull you back with Earthbreaker back under the tower again. Another little trick that you might want to watch out for is when Hercules is running away from you and you are chasing him, auto-attacking him in the back, something that you might want to watch out for is Hercules to take a step back for maybe just a half second, which is usually long enough to get behind you if you are attacking him in the back, and then Driving Striking you forward in the same direction that he was originally running. That can put you out of position by, again, pushing you into a tower if he happens to catch you at the right time. Again, this is one of those things where you're like, wait a minute, I was just behind him, hitting him, he was running from me, and now all of a sudden I am dead. How did that happen? Again, it is all about positioning. Knowing what the enemy can do to you is just as important as knowing what you can do to the enemy. Now let's talk about Earthbreaker for a minute. Obviously, we've already discussed the combo of pulling with Earthbreaker and then pushing with Driving Strike. However, you can add to that, using the 1.5 second stun of Driving Strike, you can use your Excavate after that because they're standing still and smash a boulder down on them for additional damage. That 3 ability combination causes about 1,400 to 1,500 just base damage. That is not counting scaling at all. So just remember that if a Hercules has his full kit available, he can at will do an intense amount of damage in a very short amount of time. Now, while we're talking about Earthbreaker, let's talk about another kind of generic tip. When we're talking about juking abilities, Earthbreaker is a very hard ability to hit if you know how to avoid it. The problem that I see with people trying to juke is they try to juke with their A and D keys. They try to strafe back and forth. That's not really juking. That is actually, to me, just as easy to hit as somebody who is just standing still. To really juke, especially slower abilities like Earthbreaker, what you want to do is use your mouse to turn at a 90-degree angle. That is a much sharper juke. You move faster moving forward instead of side to side, and it's going to make it easier to dodge abilities like Earthbreaker. So as a general rule, turn with your mouse, don't strafe with your keyboard. Now let's move on and talk about mitigate wounds for a minute. Remember, I told you that this ability gives Hercules some insane sustain. Early on, when Hercules can't put points into his ultimate, he's going to be leveling his driving strike first and his mitigate wounds second. At rank 2 in mitigate wounds, over a 4-second period, Hercules heals for 100 health. Now, if he's in solo lane with blue buff, that is essentially a free heal. That's also not counting that on the second portion of this ability, he is mitigating 45% of the damage that you do to him. So if Hercules is a problem in your games, you might want to think about healing reduction items like Weakening Curse. If you've got room in your build, you can also fit in maybe a Divine Ruin or a Brawler's Beat Stick, and remember that he gets most of the health back after the 4 seconds. So what I mean is that this ability is technically 14 seconds long. The first 4 seconds is him charging it up, so all the damage that he's done is gaining into this big pool. The last 10 seconds is him healing all of the health that was gained in that pool. So if he takes a lot of damage during that 4-second charge time, you want to use your Weakening Curse right as he starts to heal on that 10-second period, and that eliminates a lot of the healing that he's going to return. Now, as an offshoot to that tip, while he's charging, don't attack him. It's that simple. Attack him after the charge is done. When you do that, you accomplish 2 things. 1, you don't build that huge healing pool up so that he can heal while you're trying to fight him afterwards. And 2, you don't waste your entire kit on a Hercules who's just going to heal all that damage back. So if you fight Hercules during the 4 seconds that he's mitigating wounds, you may find yourself with no abilities left, fighting a guy who's healing a ton of health and who is more powerful because you damaged him prior to him healing that back up. Hercules is going to take some time to get used to, and finding out when to fight him is one of the most important things that you can learn. Now let's talk about Excavate. This is going to be pretty quick because it's a very straightforward ability. We've already kind of talked about everything that it does. It does a lot of damage, you can throw it over walls, and you can bounce it off of stuff. So just remember that you're not necessarily safe if you've run around a wall to get away from Hercules. Excavate is much easier to hit than, say, Ra's Searing Pain. Searing Pain has a very narrow targeter, whereas Excavate is a massive boulder, so it hits a much larger distance, making blind shots like throwing the boulder over a wall much easier to hit. In addition to that, remember that Hercules' boulder can bounce, so be careful in tight quarters. You want to be careful fighting in the jungle or in, say, Odin's Ring of Spears, because Hercules can throw a rock and get several bounces in a row. He may hit you 2, 3, 4 times if you fight in a jungle in a small corridor and he happens to get the right angle on that boulder. So Excavate in some place like the jungle with close quarters during a jungle team fight can be absolutely destructive, so you definitely want to watch out for that. So there you have it, guys. That's Hercules in a nutshell. If you guys have any other questions, make sure you leave those down in the comment section below. Either myself or one of the lovely viewers will answer it for you. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter if you do want to ask a question personally. And until next time, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me. We'll see you next week when we're going to be talking about Cupid, the god of love.